Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on the time zone in which you're watching us from. Welcome back to CM Academy podcast. We're delighted to be with you this year. This is the first podcast we are shooting this year. And as we always say in this podcast, at CM Academy, we believe that we go to school to acquire skills and knowledge, not to keep them to ourselves, but to use them to help the village. And we also add the estate. And so I'm delighted to welcome two professionals who will be helping us look at the issue of affordable housing and just demystify what affordable housing is, what ownership of these affordable housing units entails, and so many other issues around an ESG framework. But before I introduce our professionals, I want to thank you, viewers, for patronizing our YouTube channel. You've given us very good feedback and the views are coming in, and we are happy. It means we are doing something that this market was ready for, and we still welcome you to write to us in case you want to be featured in our podcast, to also share your knowledge and skills with, again, we say the village. So you're welcome to write to us. So back to the topic today, as I said, we are discussing the issue of affordable housing, and I'm joined by two professionals, and I will allow them to introduce themselves. So I will start from my left. Karibu sana.
Thank you, Stella. My name is Susan Mwango. I am a legal associate at CM Advocates. I'm pleased to join the rest of my panelists in discussing this very pertinent issue on affordable housing.
Asante sana, Susan.
Well, lovely viewers, thank you, Stella, for this great opportunity. My name is 𝗬𝗲𝗄𝗏𝗯𝗹𝗶. I'm a business development strategist. I work at the intersection between innovation, strategy, and development. I work as a business development at CM Advocates, data protection and cybersecurity. I'm passionate about helping different organizations, startups, multilateral organizations, regionally, globally, locally, to grow and scale and bring about a viable economic impact. Thank you.
Thank you, Susan. Thank you, Tim. And again, we are happy to have you here. And straight into the discussion on affordable housing, allow me to start with a quote, and you'll also allow me to read it. One of the special rapporteurs from the UN had this to say on adequate housing. So they say that housing is not a commodity. It is not four walls and a roof. It is a place to live in security, peace, and dignity. Now, having heard that quote, I would want to ask our viewers what, in their estimation, is adequate housing. And I will start with you, Susan.
I think that quote encapsulates properly really what adequate housing is, because it opens by sharing that it is not just four walls. You can't just have four walls and a roof and be content that is adequate housing. I think, of course, adequate housing would speak about the amenities that are available within that house, within the four walls. So do you have water? Is there proper sanitation? Are you able to access electricity? Is there proper security, or are you living in a place where you're afraid to park? You're afraid to arrive there every morning or evening, depending on how you work or schedule your living and coming in. Also, from a legal perspective, I'd say that it also speaks to the security of title. Are you in constant threat of eviction? Are you in constant threat of losing that ownership? So adequate housing will encapsulate some of those issues.
Thank you, Susan. You just talked about eviction, and that is the nightmare of most of us when it comes to housing. But let's hear from Tim. What do you consider as adequate housing?
Thank you, Stella. That's a brilliant question. It's indeed a distinguished honor and privilege to be here to discuss these very pertinent issues. When you talk about that, I will look at it in various aspects. Number one, let me speak about the legal aspect of it. You live in a place where there is a security of ownership of that place. There's a proper structure that has been there in terms of ownership. And also, if you're building houses, we are not just building a concrete jungle. As we build these houses, it's important that we build them sustainably and holistically, keeping in mind that we need other supporting infrastructure. We are not just building these houses, but we need to build a thriving community where we have other amenities. We need schools. We need clinics. We need a proper sewerage system. We need to ensure that there is proper even maintenance of that place to ensure that the proper standards of living are being adhered to in terms of having proper maybe estate management of that place, ensuring there's access to maybe transport as well. Is it in a place where people can walk or go to work in a safe place? Are there maybe playgrounds for the kids to play? And in terms of even how the houses have been constructed, have they followed or strictly adhered to regulations that are there in terms of how the construction is done? For example, maybe building a house where in a few maybe years to come you see maybe molds over the entire house. So ensuring that there's proper sanitary conditions as well. So building them in using sustainable material in such a way that there's no maybe degradation to the environment, and it's not a place where people can be able to get adverse effects maybe because of how the environmental issues were not adhered to in terms of how the construction is done. I'll look at it in that aspect. So building a sustainable place where people live and coexist, and also ensuring also that we all, in terms of like even the cultural or diversity of the place, is a place that is inclusive of people from diverse cultural, socio-economic background. Thank you.
Thank you for your views on what you consider adequate housing is. And we know that this government, the current government, is the one that has taken this debate on housing a notch higher. And I think under the better agenda for this government, that's why we got now affordable housing being talked about a lot. In your estimation, and not holding brief for this government or anyone, why do you think there was need for adequate housing, to have that as an agenda that is actualized?
I think when we talk about the Constitution as our all-encompassing and governing authority, I think we derive authority from Article 43(1)(b) of the Constitution, which talks about, as one of the Bill of Rights, adequate housing is listed among that. And I think this government has taken that particular bit of the Constitution and has in some way run with that, with it, and has justified the affordable housing agenda from that particular article of the Constitution, that every person is entitled to adequate housing. And the Constitution goes on to explain what that means. So in fulfilling that part obligation, I think the government has taken upon itself to run this agenda of affordable housing on that basis.
Thank you. So, Susan, you bring in the issue of it being a constitutional right, and also I think what we call socio-economic right. And so it's anchored in law, and for them, what they're doing is trying to implement to ensure that that right now comes to fruition. So back to you, Tim. Do you think there's justification for this government and successive governments to ensure that there's adequate housing in Kenya?
Okay, thank you so much, Stella. That's a very brilliant question, and I'm not here to make political statements or hold brief for the government. I love being a bit more factual, and let me give you the numbers. By statistics, it shows clearly that Kenya has a housing deficit of about 2 million units. The current production or the current supply of houses in the country is about 200,000, mostly about 200,000 units to about 50 to 200,000 units, which still shows you clearly that there's demand for proper housing. And when we look at urban dwelling, in 60% of people within urban settlements in Kenya today live in what I would call informal settlements. And so what was the government actually trying to address? The government was, with affordable housing, the government was trying to address, number one, economic inequality. Statistics show clearly that only about less than 10% of the people are being able to get mortgage. So it means there's a problem when it comes to house ownership. And the government came to solve this particular issue. I remember there was actually the aspect of social housing and affordable housing. Allow me to actually to bring my point home clearly. Let me address these particular issues clearly. So social housing generally was meant, which was there even in other previous regimes, social housing was meant to address the issue of housing within very vulnerable members of the society. People, think of it, people living today in Koch, people living in Kosovo, in those, they live in very dilapidated situation. In literature, maybe we would call it the 𝗍𝗑𝗋𝗋. That's a literature term. So they lived in a very unsanitary condition. It is not very conducive places to live in. So that was meant to address those vulnerable members of the society. Then affordable housing then came. This current government, they realized within the economy, especially people within the middle, lower income, had problem accessing housing. They have been locked out with the main private development because of course, access to mortgage. So then the government came in with the whole affordable housing to enable them to get housing and to ensure that the rule or the principle was that to ensure that housing does not take more than 30% of household income. That's what was being addressed by this current. So ensuring that economic inequality is addressed, and also again, it is also a way, of course, resuscitating the manufacturing economy. Affordable housing today, when you look at cement today consumption, the rates have gone up by 23%. So it means we are creating more jobs within this industry. Today, Savannah Bamburi Cement is operating at full capacity, and because there's huge demand for them to meet the supply, it means they also have to employ more people. So the reason also in terms of economic research. So don't think about it in concrete jungle. Think about it in the aspect of economic research. That's the reason we have it. And of course, people would argue economically why maybe affordable housing as opposed to doing maybe like manufacturing. There's something in economy, we call it economic echo. So if you build a house for 1 million, it will have an economic echo of about 3 million. Let me break this point down. So building these houses, there are so many other industries that are involved in this. Think about people who are going to supply cement. Think about people who are going to supply steel. I've given the numbers, types of statistics in terms of how cement consumption has grown high. But also it has, of course, also reset like the 𝗍𝗂𝗃 industry. The people within the 𝗍𝗂𝗃 industry are doing, of course, they're building the doors, the windows. If we look at what was injected within that 𝗍𝗂𝗃 sector, currently when the project started, it was about 4.3 billion injected into this. It has now grown to the first half of maybe 2026 to about 11 billion. So it means we are also growing the 𝗍𝗂𝗃 sector. And also, if we look at also in terms of risk, I've stated clearly that there's a very huge demand for houses. Whereas if we're doing manufacturing, number one, in terms of even the financing structure that has been used, for us, we of course, they're using a house levy, sort of an equity fund that is guaranteed and predictable. If it was manufacturing, they needed to get a loan that may be a bit sustainable. And also in terms of job creation, this was going to create also massive job creation, as opposed to manufacturing that has barriers to to entry because there is need for people who have specialized skill and engineers. So this one addresses the whole issue of economic reset. Of course, there's then immediate money circulation. Other industry have benefited. Think of it, people in bakeries, eateries, what else? Thank you.
Thank you, Tim. So you say that definitely there's a demand for these houses.
Yes.
And as we're looking at what we'd consider as adequate housing, there's also the issue of affordability. And I don't want to assume that the fact that we call these affordable housing,
Yes.
they are affordable.
Yes.
But let's park that discussion and go back to Susan. One of the core tenets of adequate housing for you is the ability to be secure in the fact that your ownership is also secured. So when we look at the affordable housing scheme in Kenya, it's backed by a law, the Affordable Housing Act. But we get a lot of questions about the issue of ownership. So if someone was to buy or get into an arrangement to get a unit from the affordable housing scheme, what document is there something they are getting to show that they have title over that property?
So Stella, what I would say about that issue is, of course, the Affordable Housing Act provides that the regime that will govern the ownership of homes, houses, or title will be the Section Titles Act, which is a law that is already existing and was passed a while back. So the Sectional Titles Act is a law that helps owners of multi-stories or story blocks to own title to their various units. Mm-hmm. Because of course, when you're on the first floor of a building, how do you, it allows you to own a part, because of course the first floor is built on the ground on a piece of land somewhere. So it also enables you to be enjoying in the ownership of that ground where your title is, and of course give you full ownership. So you'll find that most of these affordable housing units, they're not built as standalone houses. They'll take their fashion, and if all of them are, take the liberty of saying all of them, are multi-storied blocks of units, so that the regime that governs how that ownership is sectioned is the Sectional Titles Act. So this law allows that after the units have been developed, that each owner of a unit gets title to the unit that they hold. So that is how ownership of these houses pass from government, where the houses are built on public land, to these unit holders, or to now the current owners of the units of affordable houses.
Okay, so definitely someone will get a sectional title
for the unit that they own.
So as a follow-up question, when I get that title, does it mean that I own that property in perpetuity, or are there certain conditions and riders in terms of the duration of time?
So where the original parcel was public land, of course what you would be holding would be a lease from the government. The maximum period for that lease would be 99 years. So we would hope that the sectional titles, when you get the title, the tenure of the title would be a leasehold. The maximum period for that title would be 99 years. So you'll be getting a 99 years lease from the government. So what happens after the 99 years? You have to, after the expiry, you have to renew your lease. So that is the kind of ownership you're getting in terms of tenure.
Okay, allow me to again make your life a bit difficult, because when we talk about affordable housing, some of the viewers that are watching us may not understand or not comprehend it in English. Are you able to break it down in Swahili, and it doesn't have to be the fluent. And yes, just break it down so that someone who's watching us and is not able to understand can get something when you say it in Swahili.
I don't believe my Swahili is this bad, but how do we say ownership? Kumiliki kwa ardhi. Serikali imejaribu kufanya umiliki wa nyumba kwa watu ambao hawezi jiweza, ama kwa watu wa mapato ya chini kuweza kupata nafasi ya kumiliki cheti cha umiliki huo, which is the title deed. Na kwa sababu ya hayo, kuzingatia constitution yetu ya 2010 ambayo ni katiba ya 2010 ambayo inasema ya kwamba kila mtu ako na haki ya kupata mahali pa kuishi ambao umekamilika, adequate housing. So kwa hiyo mujibu wa katiba, serikali imepitisha mfumo wa affordable housing ili kufanya watu wengi waweze kupata umiliki wa hii cheti ambayo ni title deed. Hivyo ndio ninaweza kuelezea kwa lugha ya Kiswahili. Kwa hivyo serikali imechukua jukumu ya kusaidia raia kuweza kupata makao kwa njia ya kumiliki cheti vya umiliki.
Sorry for putting you on the spot. Tim, are you able to try and explain in your own Swahili to the viewer who does not understand English?
Yes.
What this whole concept of affordable housing is. And the reason why I'm doing this is we say that we have a housing need, and the need is so dire.
Yes.
I don't know about the statistics in terms of uptake,
Yes.
but I'm using the feelers in terms of what people say. I don't want those houses, I will not be able to own them. No, or we will own them and then something will happen, they'll be taken away from us.
Okay.
So are you able to explain to them what is happening in terms of affordable housing in your own language? Simple Swahili. Yes.
Haya, basi wacha nijaribu kuzungumza katika lugha ya Kiswahili. Jambo hili la mambo ya makao, tuna mambo ya makao sababu kwa kipindi cha muda mrefu tumekuwa na shida ambayo watu wamekosa makao ambayo wameishi mahali ambapo ni nadhifu, mahali ambapo pia sababu ya zile conditions ama ile area ambayo iko, wamekuwa na challenge maybe ya kuishi mahali ambapo wataishi vyema, watakuwa na masuala ya afya ama pale. But tunahitaji hizi nyumba sababu ukweli ni kuwa watu wengi ambao wanaishi katika especially sehemu za mijini, watu wengi wanaishi katika zile vitongoji duni ambavyo ama tunapoita kwa lugha ya Kimombo informal settlement. So sababu ya sisi kuwa na hizi ni kuwa tunataka watu waishi katika hali na ambapo wataishi kama binadamu wa kawaida, wanaishi mahali ambapo watajivunia watoto hao wanaishi makao mazuri. Na umuhimu wa hapa ni kuwa statistics ama yale utafiti ambao umefanywa unaonyeshwa ya kwamba wakati ambapo watu wanaishi katika hizi sehemu ama hali hizi hali duni, kupata magonjwa because angalia hata zile vifaa ambavyo wanatumia, tuseme watu wenye sasa wataishi kwa hizi nyumba, wanaishi mahali ambapo kuna gesi, kuna maji ya kutoka kwenye mifereji. So na ni maji ambayo ni masafi, na tukiishi katika hii hali nzuri, tuna reduce ile burden ama ile uzito ambapo tutakuwa tumeka kwenye healthcare, especially kwa kipindi ambapo wale donors wengi wamejiondoa katika hili, basi itatusaidia kurudisha chini vile viwango ama ile hela ambazo tunatumia katika masuala ya matibabu. So katika hili jambo ni jambo la maana sana tubadilishe vile tunavyofikiria, tubadilishe ile mindset yetu ambayo tuko nayo, tuelewe hii ni jambo la muhimu, hii ni jambo ambalo linakuja kutusaidia katika kupata kazi. Tukiangalia hizi industries zingine, kupata kazi inakuwa ngumu sababu inahitaji watu ambao wana utafiti wa hali ya juu kuweza kufanya. But ukiangalia katika hii mambo ya affordable housing, mtu wote tu wenye tajriba yote na ile skill ambayo ama ujuzi wote ambao nayo ataweza kufanya, na kitu ambayo itabadilisha jinsi ambavyo tunavyoishi. But jambo la I think la msingi pia ni kwamba serikali inavyojenga hizi nyumba, ni jambo la maana kuwa tuendelee pia kuhakikisha kwamba viwanda pia vinanawiri, because mtu akikuwa na nyumba nzuri alafu hawezi kuwa na kazi nzuri ambayo ataweza ile kukidhi mahitaji yake, ile kupata chakula, kidogo inakuwa ni jambo ambalo zileza tia kidogo wananchi katika hali ya kiwewe. Ni jambo ambalo kidogo serikali inafaa so that tunapopea watu makao mazuri pia tuhakikisha kwamba kuna shule nzuri karibu katika hizi area ambapo watu wataishi, kuna takataka maybe zinachukuliwa vizuri. Wakati ambapo tunafanya utafiti ambapo hizi nyumba zinajengwa, ya kwamba tuhakikisha kwamba kama ile shamba lilitengwa kufanya maybe project fulani yenye ilikuwa na umuhimu mkubwa katika jamii, tuhakikishe pia zimefanywa na tusifanye katika hali ambapo inaweza haribu mazingira yetu, pia yatuletee maafa zaidi. Sababu ya kuwa na kitu kingine I think ambacho ni cha maana kuwa watu wengi wanalipa hela ambazo zinakatwa katika ushuru kwenda kwa hizi nyumba, but ukiangalia ile accessibility nayo, it's not a universal accessibility. Most of the people ambao wamelipa pia wamekuwa locked out. So as we talk about affordability, it has to be done katika njia ambayo kila mtu atafanya kunufaika, kama ambavyo nchi zingine zimefanya. Ukiangalia kama kule Singapore kidogo wametumia muundo ama njia tofauti ya kuwa kila mtu ambaye ana contribute katika ile fund yao ya saving, kila mtu anaweza kupata nyumba. So inakuwa ni jambo ambalo linaleta ile hali ya equity, sio kwa Kiswahili tutasemaje, but ile inaleta hali ya usawa katika jamii. Asante
sana Tim. Kwa hivyo nikiwasikiza na kufafanulia wale ambao wanatupata kwa lugha ya Kiswahili, ni kwamba serikali, vile mmesema, serikali iliona kuna haja ya watu kukuwa na makao ambayo yanafaa, na ukiangalia katiba yetu hicho kipengele cha 43(1)(b) kinasema tuko na haki ya kukuwa na makao yanayofaa, na ndio maana wanaendeleza huu mfumo wa affordable housing. Na wakili Susan ameeleza ya kwamba unapoangalia ile sheria inayobuni mambo ya affordable housing, ina provide ya kwamba ukinunua nyumba ama pengine lipa deposit na uingie katika settlement or a plan ya kupata hizo nyumba, utapewa cheti, na hii kicheti ndio title deed. Lakini title deed haimaanishi hii nyumba ni yako. Kuna kitu tunaita kwa kimombo absolute ownership. So haikupei umiliki wa tuseme the entire of your life, hapana. At most itakupea hadi miaka 99, na baada ya hapo kuna ile renewal. Kwa hivyo kisheria kuna cheti ambacho utapewa, kinatokana na sheria inaitwa Sectional Titles Act, ndio? Yes. Asanteni sana kwa kujaribu kufafanulia wale ambao wanatutazama, na tunaelewa ya kwamba si kila mtu ambaye anatutazama anaelewa Kimombo, na hata kama unaelewa, saa nyingine unataka uelezewe kwa lugha ambayo unaelewa, na hilo ndio lengo letu kama CM Academy, kusaidia kila mtu apate haya maelezo kwa njia na kwa lugha ambayo mnaelewa, na very soon tutakuwa hata na wale wa sign language to cater for wale ambao wanaishi na disability aina zingine. So back to English and to what is comfortable. Now, there are certain things that you've explained what the law is. We have given basis for why affordable housing is important. But there are certain allegations and rumors, and I don't know if they have basis or they do not have basis. Maybe our viewers will tell us in the comments, and also maybe tell us what their fears are around affordable housing. So we'll start with you, Susan. This is not your professional opinion. This is what you've heard out there. What are some of those things? In Swahili, we call them tetesi. The ones you hear about affordable housing, the misconceptions.
I'll start with what you're calling tetesi, which Swahili, although my Swahili, I want to think I did well in my Swahili speech just a few seconds ago. But also, just to say that you've had, there have been people who've been of the view that it is not government's place to go ahead and facilitate the construction of houses. What government should have done instead is to empower the private sector through doing their job. What is government's job? Through improving the infrastructure around the country, so that this empowers private sector to take up this role of actually building the houses, other than edging out the private sector, because now, of course, private developers are in competition with government housing, and in some way they have taken a hit from this project that the government has taken upon itself to do. So they are members of the public. They are people that are of the view that really it wasn't in government place to take up a project like this. They should have supported the private sector rather, through the construction of proper infrastructure, proper conditions, through perhaps reducing the tax for corporations, such kind of support to enable the private sector thrive and fill this gap that was inadequate housing.
Okay, thank you. And Timothy, what is it you've heard out there about affordable housing that makes your ears turn, or you're like, okay, yeah, there's a point there?
Thank you. I think there's been a lot of allegations and counter allegations on this matter. I think a case in point, I'll begin by something that has been in the public domain. So the Auditor General raised very serious concerns in terms of how these funds that have been allocated, especially funds that were meant to help people afford or pay for the deposit for these houses, there's been no clarity in terms of how the usage of these funds has been done. And that brings very serious account questions. The other aspect also is in terms of maybe the revenue that has been generated, or the money that will be the government is going to get out of this project, in terms of its proper use. Because ideally, the money that is gotten from this project should ideally be used to improve the amenities around this particular projects. And just as my distinguished panelist has said, the government ideally, like we see in other jurisdictions the way they have done, they began with the aspect of infrastructure. So building, supporting infrastructure, ensuring their schools, their playground areas. These are some of the issues that have actually been overlooked. There's been the aspect of there's land that was set aside to do projects that were going to benefit the society in a particular way that will have had more impact. For a case in point is also the issue of the Kwale issue, for instance. There was need to do proper feasibility study in terms of even where these projects are going to be, of course, developed, so that we also don't interfere with the whole environmental ecosystem around this area. Maybe there have also been the issue of maybe in some of the area there's been no proper structures in terms of like how water issue has been addressed, the whole sewerage system, and also the issue of public participation as well. There's been no adequate public maybe participation in terms of you see, public participation, for it to be effective and efficient, it needs to be customized in such a way that it is done into different areas and location. Look at it in this particular manner. There are areas maybe the whole issue of affordable housing is not really a big project. Maybe that particular area needed like an industry, a value addition that will have made more economic sense. But some of these things I think were actually overlooked. Like some of it creates an impression that is something that is being forced on the people. And then there's also the clear aspect in terms of ownership. There's no clarity in terms of how maybe the lease is, whether the renewal aspect, there's no clarity. If you look at what happens in other jurisdictions, like what happened in Singapore, there's a proper clear structure in terms of after the 99 lease period elapses, it reverts back to the government. So there's clear structure on it. The other aspect has been, especially people who are salaried. Number one, we have because of the taxation which is funding this particular affordable housing project, despite the fact that it is everyone who's paying for this project, there is no universal accessibility. Look at, for example, Singapore. Singapore is doing it in such a way that home ownership is for everyone because they are clear, predictable structures. The other concern also has been, in as much as there's that deficit, have we really done proper work in terms of ensuring that we actually meeting, or we may end up a scenario whereby the uptake is slow. We end up like what was happening in China, because we look at the construction, it was done the way China did it. It's a mass dense kind of construction, so that sometimes we don't also end up having an oversupply. Then we end up having what I would call ghost cities. Because if you build also houses without proper infrastructure to it, literally you're not building a thriving community. You're literally building dormitories. Sorry to say that, but I believe it's true.
Wow, okay.
Thank you.
I didn't expect that dormitories, yes. But you've mentioned certain pertinent issues, some that touch on an area of practice, an area of interest for me,
Yes.
which is the whole issue of sustainability. But before I go to just make a comment on that,
Yes.
maybe what we're experiencing is not lack of structures. And again, I don't want to say that for me the act is adequate in terms of answering the questions, but like on the issue of the sectional titles and maybe the 99-year lease, it's very clear that when that lease comes to an end, it's called a reversionary interest here. So maybe it is more of communication and telling people, when you get this title,
Yes.
after this number of years, this is what happens to it and this is what you're supposed to do.
Absolutely.
You have a first right of renewal, and these are the conditions. So because as I read the act,
Yes.
and I hear what is out there, I see a mismatch in terms of communication.
Absolutely.
But then there's something you talked about in terms of impact.
Yes.
And now for us sustainability practitioners, we're being told, even as we do projects,
Yes.
we must also have a way to anticipate what impact it will have.
Yes.
And after now you've done the project, have something like a form of monitoring and evaluation to see, has that impact been achieved?
Absolutely.
And that brings me to the question of, Susan, when you look at the whole architecture of affordable housing, what would you want to be done in terms of reporting? What are some of the things you'd want government to report on?
I think Stella, that's a good question. I will tackle this question based on this acronym that sometimes we've stated that it has been overhyped, but I do not think it has been overhyped. ESG, environmental social governance. So in terms of what the reporting requirements that I would like to see is when we talk about sustainability and environmental sustainability, when they are sourcing for suppliers to supply material for this project, what criteria did they have in selecting these suppliers? Did they check for suppliers who are keen on green sustainability, who provide material that are ecologically safe, material that are safe for the environment? So is that something that they check for? So I would want to see that reported. In terms of water, what are their reports? How is water as a very scarce resource in this country? How was it utilized? What were the measures taken to ensure that there was no wastage? The same to energy, because in our current setup, energy is a scarce resource. So we would hope to see that the projects that the government undertake were keen and cognizant of this fact and did their best to conserve these very scarce resources. I would like to see issue of fair wage compensation. The people that are involved in this project, the skilled and unskilled laborers, what concerns do we have about their welfare? How much are they earning in terms of a minimum, if you're talking about a minimum wage? In terms of governance structures, I would hope that even the fund itself that it's set, how is it being utilized? Because there was an uproar when the levy was first set up, and the act actually had to be enacted to, of course, just because the matter had to go to court, and the court advised that there be an act to support the collection of that levy as a legal basis. So in terms of governance, how is the board operating? So the board that is in charge of this affordable housing, how are the structures of financing? So in terms of reporting, we can pick a lot of issues to report on. I think also when you talk about reporting, there's a concept about materiality. So for each project, we need to assess what is material for this project, and to bring out that issue that is material, to bring it out properly in terms of a well-written report that addresses the material issues that have been pinpointed for a particular project.
Okay, thank you. When you talk about ESG, there's an article, and I think we'll link it. An article we did where we were looking at housing and saying, is housing just the four walls and the roof? And so we're examining housing in terms of the ESG framework, as you say, the environmental, the social, and the governance aspects. So for me, I'll be interested, because it looks like affordable housing is not going anywhere. we are with it. And as justified as it is, we still see there are certain issues that we need to work together as professionals and help it to be of benefit and impact to us. But I'm curious about how affordable housing schemes can be implemented for people who have lived in certain settings and have a similar cultural identity. Like, for example, I'll be interested, and maybe if any of the viewers would want to come and give your views in terms of how affordable housing schemes can uphold culture, we would be delighted to host you. For example, the Nubian community in Kibra, we know how they live in the housing aspect. So I would be interested to see someone come up, design an affordable housing scheme that caters for that community to ensure that they still maintain that cultural identity. But that is me. So back to you, Timothy.
Okay.
What would you want, maybe using your skill and profession,
Yes.
of all these gaps we've identified, what is the one thing you'd want government, and if the policy makers and the implementers are listening, to do to help the the uptake of affordable housing scheme as a concept and even as a product?
Thank you. That's a very brilliant question. Let me begin. When we look at uptake, number one, let's ensure there's transparency and there's clear communication about this project in terms of. I love using Singapore because we use Singapore as our blueprint. Even as we try maybe to copy paste what maybe Singapore is doing, it's important that we also look at their model because in terms of what we are doing with housing levy, statistics show, not even statistics, if you check today your payslip, it keeps on shrinking. And if the payslip is shrinking because of the whole issue of house levy, that points to the fact that we're having what is called reduced disposable income. And there's reduced disposable income, it is going to affect other sectors of the economy. So in as much as we're building these houses, we need to do them also in a sustainable way also, and ensuring that we are growing also other sectors of the economy. Right? And maybe with time we need to change even the model. Because I had addressed earlier in my submission that in as much as everybody is paying for it, there is no aspect of universal accessibility. What we also changed the model. You see, like Singapore has something called a Provident Fund. So a Provident Fund is there's an amount of money from your salary that goes into a particular sort of saving account. Part of it, of course, is also like maybe paid by the employer to that, and it has been structured in such a way that if you are able to contribute to that, there's a surety for you to get a unit. There's a proper structure that the government has used to ensure there's universal accessibility. So the reason why perhaps we had affordable housing, the main reason, despite of course addressing the whole issue of housing and ensuring that our cities are better and thrive better, was the whole aspect of ensuring that vulnerable members of the society are able to get proper housing. The truth of the matter is, in terms of barriers that are there in terms of accessibility, we've not been able to address that particular issue very clearly. Majority of the people, because of the whole issue of maybe deposit, majority of the people who of course deserved to be in this project, unfortunately have actually been left out. So in as much as it's affordable, is it really affordable to cater for maybe the interest of the people we actually wanted to be able to serve with this particular project, for it to be more inclusive? Then there's need to enhance more proper public participation in terms of us having a proper dialogue. If we are coming up with maybe a particular percentage that is going to be used, is it something that is agreeable? So the government also needs to look at all other factors, because allow me to give this particular analogy. It's like you buying a very beautiful, very elegant suit, but you don't have a sustainable income. You look elegant, yes, but you'll still be broke.
Okay.
You get the concept? Yeah. So we need to also address the whole issue of ensuring there's also disposable income, because yes, some sectors of the economy might grow, but other sectors are going to suffer, because if people don't have maybe disposable income, then maybe the amount of money they spend on shopping, maybe like buying milk and bread, they will not be able to buy, which means we're going to stifle this industry, and again we'll be able to create another problem of unemployment, because of course these factories are not moving well. They'll unfortunately have to relieve some people. So we need to also do it also in such a very holistic way, also ensuring that there's also proper supporting amenities and infrastructure, so it's done in a more proper way.
Thank you, Timothy. Thank you, Susan and Timothy. I'm sure you pay the housing levy. And this is now not about being politically correct or anything. Do you have any plans of taking up a unit in the affordable housing?
I think even what Tim has addressed is, it's not even about if I want to, is does my pocket allow me to? Because now my income is saddled with so much tax, with so much levy. So in the end of the day, are we just going around in circles, so that you take money from my pocket, you build a project which I do not get any relief due to the fact that I've been contributing to that fund when it comes to I want to purchase that unit. So what I'd say is, of course, you are calling it affordable. Of course, first of all, it's a very good marketing point that it's called affordable housing, because you almost feel like it's accessible to you. But then again, when you're told about the deposit, is it really accessible? Is it really affordable? Tie that to the tiers that now have been created, because when you fall back to the regulation, for a certain income, then you can only purchase a certain tier of affordable housing, perhaps that is highly priced than what you would like. So of course I would like to purchase a unit, but the more pertinent question is what structures have the government put in place to ensure that a person like myself, who contributes to this fund monthly, that I get a form of subsidy when I would want to make a purchase? Or are we just calling it a tax and that's it? Because of course you pay tax for government to supply the amenities. So that would be the more pertinent issue.
Thank you. Let me follow up with this question. So personally, I've not taken up any of the units. I'm not sure I'm able to afford, but affordability aside, there's always this fear of you have constructed units on public land, and but then you're giving, even if it's a leasehold of 99 years or less, there's still some form of ownership by private persons. So, and having had my tour in the corridors of justice, Supreme Court recently clarified that it's not about having ownership of that title. It's about going to the root of the title and ensuring that there's no illegality in it. So for someone who's afraid to uptake a unit in the affordable housing scheme because they fear that there might be an illegality either in the title or in the process, just demystify for us what that court ruling or the clarification from court and what, if it has a bearing on these fears that people have.
So of course we are talking about the Supreme Court's ruling that it made in 2023, clarifying the position on ownership and the dinner management limited versus county government of Mombasa. So the court in that decision clarified that it is not, the issue that was before the court was about an innocent purchaser without notice. And of course, we know that an innocent purchaser without notice who receives a defective title, despite the defective title, can still claim right over the purchase. But the court clarified that that is not the case. Any purchaser, it's not enough for you to have title. The root of the title must be obtained lawfully. So, of course, when we are discussing now the issues on affordable housing, there have been a lot of questions about the legality, not just of the process, of the entire the act. Is it the people who have questioned the act, the people who've even talked about the function of housing is a function that the Constitution allocates to the county government? How is it that the national government is now spearheading this function? And there have been so many questions about the legality. But I think what I can clarify to the viewers, once the court designates, of course, not the courts, once the government designates certain parcels of land as public and allows for, and of course passes a law that's the Affordable Housing Act that allows for these projects to be conducted in a lawful manner, and lawful because they are designed and they are the projects are allowed to run by that Affordable Housing Act. It gives the authority for these houses to be built. Then you can rely on that act and you can rely on that process to state that you have a valid process that you went through to get your title. So you can always fall back to that. I'm not saying that there are not any different schools of thought. Of course, there are different schools of thought on that same point, so that another person can argue that no, there is an illegality even from the setting up. Even from, was there even proper public participation before we passed this act? So you can impugn illegality from different sectors. But what I would like to tell the viewers is there is an act in place. It gives authority for first of all, the collection of that levy, for setting up of the fund, just universally setting up the structures that allow for the affordable units to be there. Then, of course, the affordable housing speaks about the sectional titles, which is the regime from where you will get your title, and of course, the mandate to own the units that you'll be allocated. So the short answer is there is a lawful process for acquisition of the units and the titles therefrom.
Thank you. I think the issue of public participation keeps on coming up. And I remember it was an issue even when the act was being passed, but there was a High Court 3 judgment that said there was adequate public participation. But I'm imagining, so we say that yes, there's a way government can even acquire private land, a lawful process, and becomes public. What if someone wakes up and discovers something that was not very lawful about the process, and so they go to court and the court says, yes, there was an illegality, this should not be public land, it should be private?
I think because the Supreme Court, which is the apex of the interpretation of our law, has already set a very, let me call it, for lack of a better term, a strong precedent when it comes to root of title. That the root, it is not enough for you to have the title. The process by which you got that title has to be lawful, has to be legal. So it will be very interesting for what happens in that case, and whether the Supreme Court now, because it sets precedents to be followed, mandatory precedent that cascades through the entire judicial structure and systems. And so it will inform the rulings of the High Court, any other court really. So it will be very interesting if anybody would depart from this precedent, but it would follow from the Supreme Court's determination that if there is an illegality in any process leading up to your acquisition of the title, then we would question your title, and we would also say you cannot derive good title where there was none, or from an illegality, and therefore it would put you in a precarious position if there was improper procedure followed.
Thank you, Susan and Timothy, for helping us start this conversation on affordable housing. We do not claim to have all the answers, and that's why there are certain issues we've discussed and we've left them hanging as an invitation to anyone else out there who's willing to come and steer this conversation. Our intention is not to to criticize, rather to point out where the issues are with an intention of offering solutions. So I will ask you, Tim and Susan, beginning with Susan, to give your parting shots on this issue of affordable housing.
Thank you, Stella. My parting shot will be, we now have, because there have been very many questions about the legality of the process that has brought us the affordable housing project, but now here we are with an Affordable Housing Act, with a regime that enables the most vulnerable members of society now to have hope that they can have adequate housing, in terms of housing that is decent enough for their families, for them to raise their families, for them to build communities. So I would urge that if we can and if we qualify through the various qualification and eligibility criteria that has been set up by the Act, to take up these houses through purchase, of course, and where you have issues, where you have questions, where you'd love some form of clarification, CM Advocates LLP is always available to guide you through the process, to provide you also very, very many other services, including due diligence, because again, the root of the title is key, and to guide you through the very other many steps that are involved into your final acquisition of a unit. So I would urge us to take up space, because the units are here with us. And of course, because of the supply that the government is creating, we are hoping that that supply will also lead to the falling of market rates, to the joy of very many city dwellers who are grappling with very high costs of rent. So there is an upside to it. That will be my parting shot.
Thank you, Susan. Tim?
Well, thank you once again. As my parting shot, number one, let us address the issue of what I would call universal accessibility. So that for the people who are being taxed and their money goes into this housing levy, let us ensure also we have a proper structure and plan in terms of ensuring that they are homeowners as well. So there's universal accessibility, so that we are not just contributing, but we're able to also, of course, own these houses. Like, we can borrow, of course, a leaf from maybe what is happening like in Singapore, which is normally our blueprint. And the other aspect is, even as we build these houses also, let us ensure that there's also proper supporting infrastructure as well. Let us ensure there are schools, there are clinics, there are playground for the kids as well, and also ensure that in terms of even access, people with maybe disabilities and other challenges, there's access, they're able to live there very well. The issue of course, environment is also an issue that we need to ensure that we've adhered to all ESG matters as well, so that we also do this construction in a very sustainable way. Ensure that there's also transparency, there's accountability in terms of the funds that have been allocated, like ensuring maybe the audit queries that were raised by the Auditor General. These are issues that are being able to be addressed clearly in a crystal clear way. Ensuring that there's also like a proper participation, so that everybody feels part and parcel of this. And for me, I would say, let us not just look at it as a concrete jungle. Let us look at it as doing what I would call an economic reset, and especially for the manufacturing. And even as we construct this, let us also ensure that we also build other sectors of the economies, as I alluded earlier, so that we have also more disposable income, so that the country can actually being able to grow holistically as well. So even as I end, and as my parting shot, and actually as part of what we do, if you need any assistance on matters to do with data protection, I think the firm will help you with matters to do with data protection, from registration, from doing of compliance audits, whether you have cross-border practice, you operate in different jurisdiction, we can give you advisory service ensuring that you adhere with those particular regulation. We also offer virtual data protection officer services, so we can enable you to be able to comply with the data protection regulation through, of course, our affiliate, which is 𝗂𝗲𝗄𝗂 Data Protection Commission. And thank you for, of course, tuning to this and supporting this. We look forward to engaging more and enlightening members of the public on these very pertinent issues. Thank you.
Thank you, Susan, and thank you, Tim. Viewers, you've heard us, or rather you've heard our panelists. So the issue of housing, and not just housing, but adequate housing, is a right due to you, courtesy of our Constitution, Article 43(1)(a). So you have a right to adequate housing. So it's legally recognized. Can you go to court to enforce your right to housing? Yes, by all means. And government is obligated, or the state is obligated to ensure that you have this right. And that's why I am sure this government and previous governments, and hopefully successive governments, will ensure that all Kenyans have a right to adequate housing. So the issue is not about legal recognition, it's a right. The issue is about implementation, and that's where we are having a few issues here and there. And we hope that if any of our viewers is watching or listening to us, and you have a perspective that you can offer and even share with the viewers, please write to us, and we will be delighted to host you. We are also here to share with you that as CM Academy, we have a learning management system which helps us to package courses and offer them to other willing professionals or professionals to be. If you have a particular course that you'd want to offer at, let me not say friendly prices. I don't believe in friendly prices. I believe in people getting value for what the worth of what you're offering. Please reach out to us. We'll be delighted to have a discussion with you and have you package your course and offer it through our learning management system. We are still onboarding other courses and other course instructors, and we will be launching it soon. Once again, this being the first podcast for CM Academy for 2026, we are happy and we are also grateful to the increasing subscribers and the viewership and the feedback that you've given us. It shows that there's something we are offering that is of value to you, and we do not want to limit ourselves to what we think we are offering to you. We welcome you to write to us and suggest any other topics that you feel you want enlightened on. And we are willing to go the extra mile, as you saw our panelists try to do some bit of this interview in Swahili. We will keep at it. Our Swahili may not be very fluent, but our intention is to communicate and have you get the message. So we will do that. And as we said again, we're also making arrangements to have sign language interpreters so that we can walk this journey all over. So we are leaving no one behind. Until next time, keep watching and keep subscribing. Thank you.